Picture this: the faint hum of a lawnmower slicing through the Saturday morning stillness, a sound so familiar it's become the heartbeat of my world. I'm Claire, 38 years old, and for over a decade, I've shared my life with Martin in a suburban bubble where every house looks like it was cut from the same beige blueprint. Our home is no exception. Beige walls, beige curtains, even the beige predictability of our days. I can set my watch to the rhythm of our routine. At 6:45 a.m., Martin shuffles downstairs, his slippers slapping against the hardwood as he grumbles about the coffee maker taking too long. By 7:30, he's out the door, briefcase in hand, and I'm left with the silence of a house that feels more like a museum of our past than a place where life happens. Every Christmas, without fail, Martin hands me a lavender-scented candle, wrapped in the same crinkly red paper, a gift so expected I could recite his accompanying "Thought you'd like this, hun," before he even opens his mouth. And every night, as we climb into bed, he mutters, "Good night, hun," before rolling over, his back a wall between us. Within minutes, the room fills with the steady drone of his snoring, a sound as reliable as the ticking of the clock on my nightstand. I lie there, eyes fixed on the ceiling, tracing the faint cracks in the plaster as if they might spell out some hidden message about what I'm supposed to feel. Our intimacy, when it happens, is a rehearsed performance. Every move memorized, every touch mechanical, ending with his obligatory kiss on my forehead, a gesture that feels more like a stamp of completion than any real affection. It's not that I'm unhappy exactly. I've never even thought to complain. I've molded myself into the shape of what I was taught a good wife should be: quiet, accommodating, grateful. But as I stare into the darkness night after night, I can't help but wonder, is this all there is? Is this the sum of my story, written in beige ink on a page that never turns? There's a part of me that's grown so accustomed to this life, I've almost forgotten what it feels like to want more. Almost. Because somewhere, deep down, there's a flicker of something restless, something I can't name but can feel stirring on those long, sleepless nights. I didn't know it then, but a stranger named Ethan would soon walk into my world, turning everything I thought I knew upside down in ways I couldn't have imagined. That disruption was still on the horizon, though, a storm I couldn't yet see gathering. For now, my days were still measured by the same old ticks and talks, the same old sounds and silences. But then, there was this one evening, a Thursday, I think, though the days blur together so easily. Martin came home later than usual, the front door clicking shut with a sharpness that made me look up from the worn oak dining table where I sat, picking at a reheated casserole that had gone cold long before I even took my first bite. The kitchen smelled of overcooked broccoli and stale garlic, a scent as uninspired as the rest of my evening. I was halfway through mentally replaying the same old list of chores for tomorrow when the door swung open, and there was Martin, bursting in with a grin so wide and uncharacteristic it almost looked like it belonged to someone else. My fork paused mid-air, a lump of soggy potato dangling precariously as I stared at him, trying to figure out what could possibly have him looking like he'd just won the lottery. "Claire, you're not gonna believe this," he said, his voice practically vibrating with excitement as he tossed his coat over a chair without even bothering to hang it up. He strode over to the table, his eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen in years, and slapped a glossy ticket stub down in front of me. "I won a raffle at work, an exclusive art event at that old historic theater downtown. And get this, we're invited to be models for a performance. Us, can you imagine?" I blinked at him, then at the ticket, then back at him. And before I could stop myself, a laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep in my chest. It wasn't a kind laugh, more like the sound of disbelief spilling over. I pictured us, Martin with his stiff posture, and me with my perpetual slouch, standing awkwardly on some stage, draped in weird costumes or posing for some avant-garde nonsense, while pretentious artists sipped wine and nodded approvingly. "You're kidding, right?" I managed to say, wiping a tear from the corner of my eye. "Us? Models? We can barely take a decent selfie." But Martin didn't laugh. He didn't even crack a smile. Instead, he leaned across the table, his hands gripping the edge. His face so close, I could see the faint stubble he hadn't bothered to shave that morning. His eyes locked onto mine, with an intensity that made my stomach twist. "I'm serious, Claire, dead serious. I want to do this. I want us to try something new. Something completely out of our comfort zone. Don't you ever get tired of this?" He gestured vaguely at the room, at the casserole, at the beige walls that seemed to close in around us. "Don't you want to shatter the monotony just for one night?" His words hit me like a cold splash of water. I opened my mouth to argue, to say that I liked our routine, that predictability was safe, that I didn't need anything more than what we had. But the lie stuck in my throat. Because deep down, beneath the layers of resignation I'd piled on over the years, there was that flicker again, that restless thing I couldn't name, stirring awake at the thought of something different. Yet the bigger part of me resisted, clinging to the familiar. The night of the art event arrived faster than I expected, and as Martin and I stepped into the historic theater downtown, I felt a strange mix of curiosity and dread knotting in my chest. The air inside was heavy with the scent of old wood and dust, and the dim amber lighting cast long, wavering shadows across the ornate walls. I clung to Martin's arm a little tighter than usual, my heels clicking nervously on the polished floor as we moved through the crowd of other participants, their hushed whispers swirling around us like a secret I wasn't meant to hear. That's when I first saw him, Ethan, the young curator, standing near the entrance to the backstage area, his sharp features catching the light in a way that made my breath hitch for reasons I couldn't quite place. He was in his late 20s, with tousled dark hair that fell just over his brow and piercing green eyes that seemed to cut right through me, as if he could see every hidden thought I'd ever buried. He approached us with a smile that was both welcoming and unsettling, his voice smooth and almost hypnotic as he extended a hand. "Claire, Martin, I'm so glad you could join us tonight. I'm Ethan, and I'll be guiding you through this unique experience." There was something in the way he said "unique" that sent a shiver down my spine, but I forced a polite smile, nodding as he gestured for us to follow him. He led us through a labyrinth of dark velvet curtains, the fabric brushing against my skin like whispers, and past cracked mirrors that reflected fragmented versions of myself. My wide, uncertain eyes staring back at me in pieces. The backstage area was a maze of shadows, the faint hum of equipment vibrating through the floor, and every step seemed to pull me deeper into a world I didn't understand but couldn't escape. Martin, ever the practical one, muttered something about needing to check on a detail with one of the other organizers. "I'll be right back, hun," he said, squeezing my shoulder before disappearing around a corner, leaving me alone with Ethan in a secluded nook backstage. The space felt too small, too intimate, the amber light pooling around us like a spotlight that pinned me in place. My unease grew as Ethan stepped closer, his presence both invasive and magnetic, like a force I couldn't pull away from even if I wanted to. I could feel the heat of him, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the musty air, and my heart started to race for reasons I didn't want to name. "You seem nervous, Claire," he said softly, his voice wrapping around me like a caress. Before I could respond, he reached out, taking my hands in his grip firm but warm, grounding me even as it made my pulse spike. He looked into my eyes with an intensity that stole the air from my lungs, his green gaze holding me captive. "Your husband wants you to be real, here, now." His words confused me, sending my mind spinning with questions I couldn't voice. What did he mean? How did he know what Martin wanted? But before I could find the words to ask, his hand moved, his fingers brushing against my cheek, tracing a slow, deliberate path down my neck. The touch sent an electric jolt through me, every nerve in my body waking up in a way I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. I should have pulled away. I should have said something, anything, to stop this before it went further. But I was frozen, caught in the surreal haze of the moment, my breath shallow as his face dipped closer. Then, in a gesture that felt both inevitable and forbidden, his lips brushed against my collarbone, soft and deliberate, the sensation overwhelming me until I couldn't think, only feel. My world narrowed to that single point of contact, the warmth of his mouth against my skin, the way my body betrayed me by leaning into it, craving more even as my mind screamed that this was wrong. I was betraying Martin, right here under the soft glow of that backstage spotlight, losing myself in a moment I knew I'd regret, but couldn't stop. Time seemed to stretch, each second heavy with the weight of what I was doing. My mind was a storm, torn between the heat of Ethan's touch and the icy stab of guilt that pierced through me. I stumbled back, my breath ragged, my hands trembling as I fumbled to adjust the straps of my dress, the fabric suddenly feeling too tight, too exposing. I couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see whatever expression might be on his face. Satisfaction, pity, or something worse. Without a word, Ethan melted into the shadows of the backstage maze, his footsteps fading into nothingness, leaving me alone with the echo of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I stood there, frozen for a moment, the air thick with the scent of dust and my own shame, before forcing myself to move, to escape the suffocating weight of that secluded nook. I wandered deeper into the labyrinth of curtains, the heavy velvet brushing against my arms like accusatory whispers. My thoughts were a chaotic mess, spiraling between the memory of Ethan's lips on my skin and the gnawing dread of what I'd just done to Martin, to us. Every step felt unsteady, my heels catching on the uneven floor as I tried to orient myself in this disorienting maze. The hum of distant voices from the theater seeped through the fabric walls, a reminder of the world beyond this shadowed prison I'd trapped myself in. I needed air, needed clarity, needed to find a way to face what I'd done. But my mind wouldn't settle, wouldn't stop replaying the moment I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. As I pushed through another layer of curtains, I stumbled upon a narrow gap in the fabric, a sliver of an opening that revealed the auditorium beyond. My breath caught as I peered through, my eyes scanning the dimly lit rows of seats. And there he was, Martin, sitting in the front row, his posture calm, almost too composed. A faint smile played on his lips, a subtle curve that sent a shiver down my spine for reasons I couldn't name. My gaze dropped to his lap, and my stomach lurched. A tablet rested there, its screen glowing with a cold, artificial light, casting sharp shadows across his face. On that screen, I saw it. A live feed, grainy but unmistakable. Me. Ethan. The secluded nook. Every forbidden second captured, streamed for Martin to witness in real time. The surreal horror of it hit me like a physical blow. My hands gripped the curtain for support, the rough fabric biting into my palms as I struggled to process what I was seeing. He'd watched everything. Every touch, every hesitation, every moment of my betrayal laid bare before him. My knees felt weak, my vision blurring at the edges as a wave of nausea rolled through me. How could he just sit there, so still, so serene, while watching something that should have shattered him? I wanted to scream, to run down to him, to fall at his feet and beg for forgiveness, or maybe to demand answers, to understand why he wasn't storming backstage in a rage. But my feet felt glued to the floor, my body refusing to obey the frantic commands of my mind. I stared at him through the gap, my breath shallow, my heart a wild drumbeat in my chest. Then, as if he could feel the weight of my gaze, Martin looked up. His eyes met mine through the darkness, piercing the distance between us with an intensity that made my blood run cold. His lips moved, mouthing something I couldn't decipher, a silent message that hung in the air like a riddle. Was it forgiveness? Accusation? Something else entirely? I strained to make sense of it, my mind racing to fill in the blanks, but the shadows and the distance kept his words a mystery. A chilling mix of emotions swirled inside me, fear, sharp and biting, at the thought of what he might do next. Confusion, because his calm demeanor made no sense, contradicted every expectation I had of how this should play out, and, strangest of all, a flicker of anticipation, as if some part of me was waiting for whatever game he seemed to be playing. He wasn't angry. I could see that much in the way his smile lingered, in the steady way he held my gaze. But I couldn't stay hidden behind that curtain forever, frozen in the weight of Martin's gaze. My legs trembled as I forced myself to move, pushing through the heavy velvet with a resolve I didn't feel. The backstage shadows seemed to cling to me, reluctant to let go, but I emerged into the open expanse of the theater, the stage looming before me like a judgment seat. The spotlight hit me as I crossed the worn wooden boards, its harsh glare blinding me for a moment, turning the world into a white haze. I blinked rapidly, my heart pounding so loud I was sure it echoed through the empty auditorium. My heels clicked against the floor, each step a sharp, solitary sound in the eerie quiet, amplifying my vulnerability as I descended the steps to the front row where Martin sat, unmoving, his eyes still fixed on me with that unnerving calm. The theater felt like a void, the rows of empty seats stretching out into the darkness, silent witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. I could barely breathe as I reached the bottom step, my body tense, my mind a whirlwind of guilt and dread. I stood before him, just a few feet away, close enough to see the faint lines etched into his face, the subtle curve of that smile that hadn't faltered since I'd first seen him through the curtain. My mouth opened, my voice trembling as I tried to form words, to stammer out some kind of apology, some desperate plea for understanding. "Martin, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean for—" But before I could finish, he raised a hand, a gentle, almost tender gesture that silenced me instantly. The motion was so calm, so deliberate, it sent a fresh wave of unease rippling through me. He leaned forward, closing the small distance between us, his face now mere inches from mine. His breath was warm against my cheek as he whispered, his voice low and intimate, sending a shiver down my spine that I couldn't suppress. "We're not done yet, Claire. This is just the prologue." The words hung in the air, heavy with a meaning I couldn't fully grasp, each syllable sinking into me like a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples of shock that spread through my entire being. I pulled back slightly, searching his face for answers, for some hint of what he meant. His eyes gleamed with something I hadn't seen before, not anger, not hurt, but something else, something unfamiliar. Was it excitement? Anticipation? Or something darker, something I couldn't name but could feel pressing against me like a cold hand? My mind reeled, struggling to process the weight of his words. A prologue? What did that even mean? I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath me, with no idea what lay below. Martin gestured to the tablet still resting in his lap, the screen now dark, but the memory of what it had shown still burning in my mind. He tapped it lightly, bringing the image back to life, a frozen frame of Ethan and me, caught in that forbidden moment backstage, our figures blurred but unmistakable. My stomach churned at the sight, the shame flooding back in full force, but Martin's voice cut through the haze, calm and measured, almost rehearsed, as if he'd practiced these words 100 times. This event, Claire, it was designed to push boundaries, to awaken us, to strip away the beige, the routine, and force us to feel something real. I stared at him, my breath catching in my throat as the pieces started to fall into place, jagged and sharp, cutting through the fog of my confusion. He knew. He'd known all along. This wasn't just some random art event, some spontaneous betrayal on my part that he'd stumbled upon. He'd orchestrated it, or at the very least, consented to it, as part of this bizarre performance. My betrayal, the guilt that had been eating me alive, wasn't a betrayal in his eyes at all. It was a scripted act, a carefully planned scene in a play I hadn't even known I was starring in. The realization hit me like a punch, knocking the air from my lungs. I felt exposed, manipulated, like a puppet whose strings had been pulled without my knowledge or consent. But as I sit here now, beside Martin in the dim theater, the weight of his words settles over me like a heavy fog, thick and inescapable. I can still feel the ghost of Ethan's touch on my skin, the way his lips brushed against my collarbone, sending a shockwave through me that I can't shake off, even now. My fingers tighten around the armrest, the worn fabric rough under my grip as I wrestle with the storm inside me. I should be angry. I should feel violated, betrayed by this game Martin has played without ever asking if I wanted to be a part of it. And yet, as I steal a glance at him out of the corner of my eye, his profile illuminated by the faint glow of the stage lights, I can't deny the truth that's clawing its way to the surface. I liked it. I don't regret it. Not the way I thought I would. There's a part of me, a part I've kept buried under years of beige routine and quiet compliance, that came alive in that moment with Ethan. His touch, his gaze, it was like being seen, truly seen. For the first time in so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like. Not as Claire, the wife, Claire, the homemaker, Claire, the predictable half of a predictable pair, but as someone raw, someone real, someone with desires I didn't even know I still had. Even if it was through the cold, unblinking lens of a camera, even if it was orchestrated by Martin's unseen hand, that moment cracked open something inside me. It was a thrill, a rush of blood and heat and life that I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. And as much as I want to hate myself for it, as much as I want to drown in the guilt that still lingers at the edges of my mind, I can't. I don't want to go back to the numbness, to the endless cycle of beige days and beige nights. I want more. I shift in my seat, the creak of the old chair breaking the silence between us, and I let my thoughts drift back to Martin's cryptic promise of a next scene. What did he mean by that? What else does he have planned in this twisted theater of his making? My heart quickens at the thought, not with fear, but with something else. Something dangerous. Something hungry. I can't help but wonder what other boundaries he intends to push. What other parts of myself I might uncover in the process. His orchestration, as unsettling as it is, has ignited a fire in me. A dormant craving that's now wide awake and demanding to be fed. I don't know if I should be terrified of that or exhilarated. But right now, sitting here in the half-dark, I feel the pull of both. I turn my head slightly, studying Martin more closely. He's still watching the empty stage, his expression unreadable, but there's something different about him now. He's not the man I've known for over a decade, not the predictable husband who hands me lavender candles every Christmas and mutters, "Good night, hon," before rolling over. In this moment, he's a stranger, a man with hidden depths I never suspected, shadows behind his eyes that I've never seen before. And I realize, with a jolt that sends a shiver through me, that he might have been craving this break from our routine just as much as I unknowingly did. Maybe he's been suffocating under the weight of our beige life too, trapped in the same museum of our past, yearning for something to shatter the monotony. Maybe this, whatever this is, was his way of breaking free, of dragging us both out of the numbness and into something raw and real, even if it's messy, even if it's wrong. The thought twists something inside me, a mix of unease and fascination. What else has he been hiding? What other desires has he kept locked away behind that familiar face? I can't help but feel a strange sort of admiration for the audacity of it all, for the way he's taken control of our story and rewritten the script without so much as a warning. And as I sit here, the dim light flickering across the room, I realize that perhaps it's time for me to embrace the unknown and start writing my own chapter. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.